Welcome to the third session in 3D content creation for Replicate. In this video, we'll be going over some of the material properties that transfer over to the previewer as you start the surfacing process for your models. Now we'll be going step by step through the material editor, but note that content within Replicate will appear most similar to a standard max shader with the blend surface shading model. We also offer support for 4 map types: diffuse, specular color, normal maps, and reflection. So let's go ahead and take a look. For this demo, we'll be using the Cummins 855 test file. You can find that in your Replicate directory. We'll browse to the Replicate exporter and open up the samples directory here. And you can find the Cummins 855 file located here. So we've already got that open in Max 2011 here. And if you want to open up the material editor and analyze any of these materials, they were designed for output into Replicate. So we'll go ahead and open it up, hit M to open up the material editor. So first thing that you'll want to note, you'll remember that output in the Replicate equipment previewer and the editor is most similar to a standard max material with a blend surface shading model. So you'll want to set up all your materials with that basic parameter. Max supports all sorts of different special shader types. But the only other one that we support is the multi-sub-object material, and we've got an example of that on the main engine here. We've got about 25 to 27 materials here, 28 rather. And each one of those materials, you'll notice, is a standard material on its own. So one last thing to note, is the multi-sub-object materials won't support a nested multi-sub-object within its sub-material list. So you want to avoid that. So back to our blend basic parameters. We've got our 3 main color values: ambient, diffuse, and specular. The ambient color value dictates what color the darker areas of your material will appear. One diversion between Max and Replicate is in Max, as soon as you utilize a diffuse map, the color values in the diffuse color or the ambient color won't affect your material any longer, as it's replaced all of that default material properties. But when we bring it over to Replicate, the ambient color continues to affect the look of your materials, and we've set up a file here to show that. This is the water filter within your Cummins 855 directory, and you'll notice that the ambient color for this first water filter is your default medium gray. The second one is white, and the third one is yellow. And now when you export that into Replicate, you'll see that those colors are mixed with your diffuse color map. And sometimes you can use that to your advantage, but for most of the time, just be aware that the ambient color will be affecting your map color. So generally, you'll want to make this white to match your results as closely as possible within Max. And you'll note that the default for your material is gray, so exporting with this setting will make your maps automatically a tad darker than you intended. So you'll see in this file here that we've created that it's just a tad darker. It's not that noticeable. But you will want to be aware of that happening. All right, we'll go back to the original file here, and The diffuse color, of course, is your, if you don't utilize a diffuse map, you can use any color that you specify here. And your specular color is your global highlight color that will be used for your material. And of course, as soon as you utilize a specular color map, that value will be overridden. So we'll go ahead and move down to the specular highlight properties. You can turn up the specular level to control the intensity of your highlight. You'll want to ensure that you're at least using more than 0 if you intend to utilize a specular map, as a value of 0 will have no highlight to take advantage of that map type. The glossiness value will also be translated over to replicate, but here's another case where the replicate material will result in a different output than Max's, as when you have a glossiness value of 0, your specular highlight will cover the entire surface of the material. So we'll go ahead and take a look at another test file here. Just made a couple spheres to show you, but this first sphere here has your default glossiness value of 10, while the second one we reduced glossiness down to 0. And you can see the difference in the max viewport as well. But you'll notice that it's limited in its effect. If we take a look at it in the replicate editor, you'll note that the specular highlight has covered the entire surface of the model. It's almost got like a self-illuminated look about it. So you'll probably want to avoid using a value of 0 in there, since Max has that automatic limit to it. All right, we'll move on to the a couple other properties. The self-illumination value here, the color checkbox and the value aren't supported within replicate. Now the last value that we'll be going into is the opacity value here. You can adjust this value, and that's sort of the alpha value within 3D Studio Max. You can control opacity of your material, however, in 3 different ways. One is by adjusting this value here. Second would be to edit it within your image editing program. So just reducing the opacity of your layer there and saving that out as your diffuse map. And the third way that we can adjust the opacity is after we've created all the assets, we'll have these within the replicate editor, and you can adjust the alpha values within the editor at that point on an object level basis. So how you choose to implement opacity is pretty open-ended. So generally, here at DISTI, we'll leave the opacity level alone within 3D Studio Max and control it in some other manner. So we've basically established the material attributes that are supported here. You can start to create more detailed textures by taking advantage of some of the 4 map types that are available to you. Again, that's your diffuse color map, your specular color map, the normal bump channel, and your reflection map. We'll go into how we can get the most from those maps in the next video.